Hi, and welcome to guitar lesson number 1, in which we discover the pieces of the guitar and start to unravel the mysteries of the fingerboard. Um, on the website, I've put up some information, so if you want to look into the history of the guitar, you can do that. But let's get started by pointing out that the guitar is such a pure instrument because you can carry it with you, unlike the piano that I studied in college, which was, weighed 1,000 pounds and it wasn't all that easy to move. These, they're kind of fun. You can carry them with you, go to the park, entertain your friends. But before you really start to play, there's a couple of things we need to think about. One is learning the parts of the guitar, and another is learning how to tune the guitar, which in the beginning can be problematic because, well, let's face it, you're probably going to break some strings, but we'll get into that in a minute. All right, couple of things. We could do this the intimidating way. I could show you this slide and say, you have to memorize all of this. And the truth is, you do, really. But not all at once, not instantly. And we're going to do it in a way where it's a lot less scary than what you're looking at right now. So anyhow, let's try and move away from this scary slide that you're looking at into something maybe a little more friendly. So here we are. You can see that acoustic guitars and classical guitars, and, well, electric guitars as well, have a lot in common. So we're going to start with these basic pieces. Is it necessary to know the names of all these things? Uh, it's the same sort of a question as if you were learning to drive. Would you need to know where the you know the turn direction stocky thing was? Would you want to know how to turn that on? Would it matter if you knew how to make stuff in front of you light up when it's dark out? Did you know the name of the lights? So eventually you do want to know the names of these things. So um, we'll get into that in the next video, where I'm actually full screen so you can see a little better as I go through these pieces. But let's just do a few of them. The most important ones for right now is this is the fingerboard. And the fingerboard is something that's going to allow you to play different notes. The headstock is this piece right up here. And on the headstock are these tuning pegs or machine heads. And the first thing I'll say is you got to be careful if you're tuning it and you twist this thing more than, let's say, a half a turn. It's probably going to be problematic. You're probably going to break strings. But again, we'll get into that later. So here's another view of the same idea. Things you're worried about right now. Frets. Frets are the spaces between these little metal bars. The bars themselves, these bars are called frets. The reason they're there is it allows you to precisely know where the notes are on the neck, unlike a violin or a string bass or a cello, which does not have frets. This instrument does, which makes it a little easier to play. Anyhow, moving on. Here's a guitar parts definition. This is the kind of thing you probably want to come back to a number of times. You want to look at it a number of times, not just once. Don't just look at it and, well, I'm done with that. Until you're able to name all of these things, you probably want to watch this over and over again. So one of the ways you could do this is you have somebody else test you. So you start by, they can ask you, what's the back? And you go, that flat piece of wood on the back of the body. Well, pretty soon you probably are going to know what the back is. And then you can maybe turn the screen off and have them ask you the same questions. So when somebody says, what's the rosette? You'll be able to tell them, well, that's that decorative bit around the sound hole. So those sorts of things are pretty basic to learn to play the instrument. Okay, the elephant in the room. How to tune a guitar. Let's teach you how to tune a guitar. Wait, first, when you're starting, don't, because you're going to break strings. You're like, well, how am I supposed to play it? It's out of tune. Well, In the beginning, I'm going to help you. First thing I tell you is get a tuner. Also, you can get a tuning app for your phone. I would recommend getting a real tuner. Tuners work a little better. They work a little more precisely than a phone tuning app will, but it's a great way to really get started. It helps you. Even with the tuner, it's a little dangerous to tune a guitar because until you know what you're doing, you can easily break strings. So what's a tuner cost? About anywhere from you can get cheap ones for $12, $13. This one's pretty good. This is a $16 tuner. They go up to $100. There's no real reason to buy a fancy tuner. Some guitars, strangely enough, like this one has a tuner built in, you can see. And we'll get into that more in a different video, but you get the idea. First, here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to help you tune during online lessons. And if you need to practice and your instrument's a little out, you can send me a message. You can poke me. During your first lesson online, I'll teach you how to get into my email account and text me right away. So in case I'm not looking at email right at that moment, the moment I do have a moment of free time, I'll see it and go, oh, you need some help. And I'll pop in and help you tune. Guitars don't really drift that much unless the strings are brand new. Or if you have, or maybe a little brother or sister tunes the tuning pegs a lot. So having that in mind, you're going to need to buy some strings. And what do you mean buy some strings? Well, look, you're going to break strings. It happens. It shouldn't. It does. If you're very, very careful, you might be one of these few kids who only breaks a couple in the course of the first year or two. But if you're practicing a lot, strings really do wear out. They on any kind of guitar, electric, acoustic, classical, especially classical, they tend to lose their luster both visually and sound-wise. You'll lose some of the higher frequencies. Also, the oils on your hands tends to make the strings first dirty, and then later it tends to actually degrade the quality of the strings and causes them to it not just changes the way they sound, but will also actually cause you know corrosion. That's the word. God, what a senior moment. So buy some strings. Look, you're going to break strings. You shouldn't, but it happens. Maybe you'll be one of the lucky ones that doesn't break very many strings in the beginning because you know not to turn the tuning pegs or machine heads too much. But most people, you'll find, do break a number of strings. Strings also age. If you're practicing a lot, they tend to wear out. They'll suffer from the oils on your hands. They may get discolored. They sound different. They lose the higher frequencies, and corrosion eventually will degrade the quality of the string and make it so it doesn't sound very good. So even though let's face it, I have a guitar, it's 20 years old and has really old strings on it. I need to restring it because it doesn't sound very good. Anyhow, here's an example of classical guitar strings. If you're playing an electric guitar or an acoustic guitar, I can give you some basic ideas. But if you go to some place like, well, really any online market, here I'm at Amazon, you know, $10, $7, $6. $10 is a good price for a set of strings, 6 strings. When you break strings, you'll find that you tend to break the top ones the most, the thinnest strings. All of them can break. So you may find that, if you buy a couple of sets at a time, then when you break a string, you won't be frustrated because you'll have the string that you need when you break it. So tuning the guitar is a basic skill. To play in tune, you really have to have an instrument that's in tune. So I'm going to give you some simple instructions that explain the basics of tuning. Let's learn about the strings first, from the thickest to the thinnest. So E is the thickest string. It's known as the sixth string, which is kind of weird because it's the one that's closest to your head, so you might think it's the first, but really it's called the sixth. 6, 5, 4, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you're saying, well, how am I supposed to remember these letters? And the answer is, well, rote learning is usually the way most people do it. E, A, D, G, B, E. E, A, D, G, B, E. E, A, D, G, B, E. And what's weird is when you really start listening to it, you can start to hear the relationship between the strings. So you play that. E, A, here comes the bride. It's perfect fourth. If you go from A to D, also a perfect fourth. If I go from D to G, also a perfect fourth. And you're like, that doesn't sound like Here Comes the Bride. No. G to B is a major third. 1, 2, 3. So when you're tuning, that's the weird one. B is the weird one. And then go from B to E. Again, a perfect fourth. So what that does for you is when you're trying to figure out how to tune, you can use a few tricks. So we're going to tune the bottom E. So I'm listening to my bottom E. I've got a keyboard over here. I'll go play it. So I'm playing my E. I listen to my E. Sounds pretty in tune. So I'm going to go with that. It's probably in tune. It's the thickest string. It's the least likely to go out of tune. The thin ones are more likely to go out of tune. So I could use a phone app. I could use the tuner in my guitar. I could use an external tuner. But anyhow, I've got my E pretty much in tune. Here's a picture for your reference that you can come back to on this video. And it shows you where the notes on a keyboard relate to the notes on a guitar. So if you have a keyboard at home or access to a keyboard, or you've got YouTube and you can find somebody showing you how to tune a guitar on YouTube, because that's out there, kids, you can see something. So when you look at middle C on a keyboard and you go down to the E below middle C, and then you go down another octave from that, that is this E right here. And we'll get into reading that on the staff in a later lesson. But the A is a fourth above that. The D is a fourth above that. The G is the one that's below middle C. The E is just above middle C, 2 notes above middle C. And the B is 7 notes up from middle C. So to tune the A string, we're going to do this. We're going to put our finger on the 5th fret. Excuse me. So we have a finger on the 5th fret. And you can hear. Now let's say my guitar's a little out of tune. All right, so now I have an out of tune guitar. E minor 7, sus 11. Anyhow, I'm going to try and tune this using this trick. So step 2, I've got my E string in tune, and I'm going to try and tune the A string. Can you hear that the second one is a little low? So as I hold the note, I'm going to reach over. Until they sound the same. Here we go. I'm going to take the A string now. Step 3. I'm going to take the A string, put my first finger on the A string on the 5th fret. How do you know? Well, you count up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5th fret, and I'm going to tune it. Step 4, same thing. I'm on the D string. I'm tuning a G. Now here's where it gets weird. Because the B string is only up a third, it's 1 fret smaller in interval than that 5th fret. So I'm going to go to the 4th fret, and then I'm going to tune from there. So I've gone 5th fret, 5th fret, 5th fret. I get to here. And then I can tune my final string on the 5th fret. Now, after a while, if your ear is good, which it probably is because you've picked the guitar, you should be able to pick up a guitar after a while. And let's say you've got, I don't know, let's say one of the strings is out. And I'm playing along. And I think, ma. The basics of tuning guitar. Now, made it look easy. It's not that easy. It's going to take a lot of practice. In the next lesson, we're going to start unraveling the fingerboard a little more. We'll come back to tuning because tuning is a huge piece, because if the instrument's not in tune, it's darn near impossible to play the instrument. So it really is one of the first things we think about. Again, if you're tuning the machine heads more than, let's say, like half a turn, you're probably about to break a string. So that's something to think about. And in a later lesson, I'll show you how not to use a tuner, because sometimes when you get off, it becomes very difficult to figure out how to get them back close to tune. There's a couple of tricks for that as well. So anyhow, that is lesson 1. My advice to you is, go back to this beginning of this video and spend some time learning these pieces, the definitions. Learn where these things are, because if I said, the lower bout, the upper bout, the body, if I said, is your saddle well glued to the body of the guitar, would you know what I was talking about? Because sometimes this piece might start to unglue itself on a less expensive guitar. So these sorts of things are basic to playing the instrument. So anyhow, thanks for being with me in Introduction to the Guitar, or how I'm beginning to learn the notes on the fingerboard, because this is still scaring me. Although that, my friends, is a reference, and it's completely useful. It really is. So with that in mind, have a great day.